ask you this question, which is, why are you so interested in this biblical story as opposed to any other biblical story?
Well, that is because, first of all, Jesus believed in the flood model, and it's the basis for the entire authenticity of the Bible. If you can prove that the Genesis story is false, you have destroyed the entire belief system on which Christianity is based. So that's why we use this model to show people that Noah's Ark was real and that the story is true.
Well, couldn't the story have been symbolic, metaphor for other kinds of events that took place? How about creation? Couldn't that have been symbolic or metaphorical in the language that's there?
Well, it is possible, but when we look at the 4 postulates of creation and we compare them with the 4 postulates of evolution, only the postulates of creation have been observed. Evolution is based on 4 major ideas. None of them have ever been observed. Number 1, that life comes from non-life. We have not one single example of life coming from non-life. Number 2, that all the life forms that we have today came from single-cell life forms. Many people do not know that while we do have single-cell life forms that we call bacteria, we have no 2-cell life forms, we don't have 3-cell life forms, we don't have 4-cell life forms, we don't even have 5-cell life forms. That is, we go from single-cell bacteria to complex life forms. So there's no evidence that all life comes from single-cell life forms. The third postulate of evolution is that time and chance drive evolution forward, of course, and time works against evolution. The chance of one simple 100-unit protein coming together by accident is a very big number. Time and chance make evolution absolutely impossible. The fourth postulate that evolution is based on is that what we see today, minor genetic variation in species, is evidence of macroevolution. So because cats are different colors, dogs are different sizes, that means that fish turned into cows. And of course, we know that that's not true because Mendel proved that all the genes that exist today, you can shuffle them around, but there are no new genes that were created. Let's think about the 4 major postulates of creation. Number 1, where there's a design, there must be a designer. We see codes in DNA. Codes are evidence of intelligence because you have to translate from one language to another. We have not a single example of that happening by accident. Number 2, that the Earth, the solar system, the universe, and the galaxy are young, measured in thousands of years, not millions or billions of years. Many times people ask me, say, well, Major, you believe in a young Earth, a 6,000-year Earth. Can you show me that that's true without using the Bible? And I say, absolutely. What's the oldest living thing on the planet? The oldest living thing on the planet? Trees. How old are the oldest trees? 4,500 years. That takes us back almost exactly to the year of the flood, okay, in 2500 BC. Number 2, I'm saying, look at the sky. We call solar nebulae. A solar nebula is what we see from a supernova when a star explodes. It leaves a gas cloud. Because of our radio telescopes that we have now today, we can look deep into space and we can actually count the number of solar nebulae that are there. And how many are there? A supernova takes place about once every 26 years. How many solar nebulae do we have? 6,000 years worth. That's impossible.
They perish because they refused to love the truth and so be saved. But who is it that has refused to accept the truth and so be saved? It's we humans. We have refused to accept the truth. You see, they say that the truth shall set you free. It's true because the truth opens up your mind. The truth is really something that is beautiful, right? But when not telling the truth is going to be beneficial, is going to be profitable, what's being propagated now becomes a lie, a fabricated truth. A truth that has been fabricated no longer becomes truth. It becomes a lie because truth does not have versions, right? The reason why I'm telling you this is because I remember a perfect example is the one which is given by Charles Darwin. People have refused to accept that it is God who created the earth. It is him who did all this, right? So we've all refused to accept that and we are like, there has to be some other explanation. And any other explanation we can find is that of evolution. right? Well, Big Bang explains the earth. Evolution explains the coming up of living organisms, right? But I'm here to tell you that there's a smart black scholar, right? Professor, who is really there to point out that theory of evolution is a lie and that it is God who created the earth.
This question, which is, why are you so interested in this biblical story as opposed to any other biblical story?
Well, that is because, first of all, Jesus believed in the flood model, and it's the basis for the entire authenticity of the Bible. If you can prove that the Genesis story is false, you have destroyed the entire belief system on which Christianity is based. So that's why we use this model to show people that Noah's Ark was real and that the story is true.
Well, couldn't the story have been symbolic, metaphor for other kinds of events that took place? How about creation? Couldn't that have been symbolic or metaphorical in the language that's there?
Well, it is possible, but when we look at the 4 postulates of creation and we compare them with the 4 postulates of evolution, only the postulates of creation have been observed. Evolution is based on 4 major ideas. None of them have ever been observed. Number 1, that life comes from non-life. We have not one single example of life coming from non-life. Number 2, that all the life forms that we have today came from single-cell life forms. Many people do not know that while we do have single-cell life forms that we call bacteria, we have no 2-cell life forms, we don't have 3-cell life forms, we don't have 4-cell life forms, we don't even have 5-cell life forms. That is, we go from single-cell bacteria to complex life forms. So there's no evidence that all life comes from single-cell life forms. The third postulate of evolution is that time and chance drive evolution forward, of course, and time works against evolution. The chance of one simple 100-unit protein coming together by accident is a very big number. Time and chance make evolution absolutely impossible. The fourth postulate that evolution is based on is that what we see today, minor genetic variation in species, is evidence of macroevolution. So because cats are different colors, dogs are different sizes, that means that fish turned into cows. And of course, we know that that's not true because Mendel proved that all the genes that exist today, you can shuffle them around, but there are no new genes that were created. Let's think about the 4 major postulates of creation. Number 1, where there's a design, there must be a designer. We see codes in DNA. Codes are evidence of intelligence because you have to translate from one language to another. We have not a single example of that happening by accident. Number 2, that the Earth, the solar system, the universe, and the galaxy are young, measured in thousands of years, not millions or billions of years. Many times people ask me, they say, well, Major, you believe in a young Earth, a 6,000-year Earth. Can you show me that that's true without using the Bible? And I say, absolutely. What's the oldest living thing on the planet? The oldest living thing on the planet? Trees. How old are the oldest trees? 4,500 years. That takes us back almost exactly to the year of the flood, okay, in 2500 BC. Number 2, I'm saying, look at the sky. We call solar nebulae. A solar nebula is what we see from a supernova when a star explodes. It leaves a gas cloud. Because of our radio telescopes that we have now today, we can look deep into space and we can actually count the number of solar nebulae that are there. And how many are there? A supernova takes place about once every 26 years. How many solar nebulae do we have? 6,000 years worth. That's impossible in a universe that is billions and billions of years old. And we have other evidences such as alpha decay that we do in our program that most people don't understand that also shows that the Earth is 6,000 years old. So that's the second postulate that proves that the biblical story of creation is true. Life that we see today are the basic kinds of animals and plant life that were originally created. So we can test that. You can breed dogs, you can breed cats, but you can't breed cats with dogs. So there are limits to how far we can go. And lastly, that is, Earth experienced a worldwide flood in approximately 2500 BC, 1656 years after the world was created. The world is filled with limestone. Limestone is sedimentary rock. It precipitates out of water. The entire earth was filled with water. Every mountain chain in the world, including Everest, has sea life on top of that mountain. The mountains rose out of the water, so we know that there was a worldwide flood.
Let me pose a question to you, and Mark and Elise, feel free to jump in this. And that is this. Most people who don't believe in God aren't card-carrying members of the atheist club. They haven't studied molecular biology.
Yes.
Why don't they believe in God? What is the struggle there?
Neil, I'm going to tell you, that's a very good question. My answer to that is probably because most of them has not actually seen the evidence that supports the Bible. And that is my job, to actually show them. You're right. Most people are somewhere drifting, somewhere in the middle. This is a war for ideas. And it's my job to combat these forces of error, particularly in secular campuses, in universities, which is where I work and teach, and show that the evidence supports God's word. God is a God of science.
That's fantastic. Pose this question to you guys. Say someone grows up going to a Christian church. Say they have been surrounded by, a church community and pastors who preach sermons. Are there wrong ideas of God that exist? Wrong ideas of the Bible that exist?
Well, certainly they do exist, and they exist in church. Many people don't know that some of the largest religious denominations actually support evolutionary theory, and I'm really sorry to hear that. It is important that people test any church that they go to against the Bible to make sure that it is accordance with the truths of the Bible. Jesus believed in the flood story, and he said that he was coming again and it would be just as in the days of Noah. So if Jesus believed it, it's very difficult for me to understand how you could call yourself a Christian if you don't understand or accept the story of Noah's flood and the creation story. And of course, it's important to understand the science that goes along with.
You see that camera right there? There are people who are watching right now. There are people who are struggling with their faith in God. If you were to look at that camera right there and you were to talk to someone who was struggling, who is maybe a skeptic, someone wrestling with doubt, what would you say to them?
I would say, hold on. The evidence is there. God is interested in you. He respects who you are. If you read, if you study, if you seek him with all your heart, you will find him. He has promised you that. The evidence is there, and I am here.
Today, we're going to be talking about Black people. Specifically, we're going to be talking about what Mormonism and Darwinian evolution teaches and has taught about Black people. Let's get into it. As a disclaimer, this video is going to contain things that are very disgusting, so proceed at your own risk. And as a further disclaimer, most Mormons today are not taught this, so don't assume that Mormons are just racist or anything like that. This is something that was taught by their church that most Mormons are not going to be aware of, but that's why I'm going to give you the specific citations. That way, you're capable of seeing that I'm not lying and that this is actually what they taught and actually what they secretly do officially believe as doctrine. So let's back up and give a little bit more biblical information here. After the fall, we see that Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel, two sons. Cain unalived his brother Abel. As a result of this, God was going to punish him. Now, the punishment for committing that act of unaliving someone is for yourself to be put to death and unalived. Cain did not want this to happen. Cain was scared, and Cain asked God, saying like, hey, if you banish me from this place, then whoever finds me is going to unalive me for what I've done. So God tells Cain, okay, I'm going to put a mark on you. That way, anyone who sees you will know not to touch you and not to harm you. Otherwise, they're going to suffer your penalty, your payment, your punishment. They're going to suffer that which you deserve 7 times over if they take your life. And so as a result of that, Cain did not get unalived for his transgression. Cain lived his life miserably, failing in almost everything that he did. So what was that mark? We don't know. We have no idea what that was. But we know what the Mormons teach it was. See, Brigham Young's the second highest prophet of Mormonism, on March 8th of 1863 said, and I quote, "The Lord put a mark upon Cain, which was the flat nose and black skin." That quote can be found in the Journal of Discourse, volume 10, page 110. So they teach that the mark of Cain was that Cain was turned into the first black person. It gets worse. See, Mormons believe in something called a pre-existence, which is where Elohim, their fake god, is having sex with all of his different goddess wives to create humans. And so they're having spiritual offsprings that are then sent to Earth for trials and for living a life. Now, in the pre-existence, there are some people who are on the fence where they didn't know if they should follow God or follow Satan. So the ones who were on the fence, or the ones who did follow Satan in the pre-existence, they were marked in a very specific way so that when they were sent to Earth, we would be able to visually identify them as being evil in the pre-existence. Those people, according to Brigham Young's, according to the Mormon Church, those people are descendants of Cain. So the teaching that Mormons have is that black people are black because in the pre-existence they were evil, and God wanted us to be able to see that they were evil. So he gave them flat noses and black skin. That is incredibly disgusting, incredibly racist. And because they were evil in the pre-existence, God did not want them to be capable of receiving salvation. In other words, they were not allowed to become Mormons. Until June 8th of 1978. The announcement came, immediately changing the rule because they claimed that God changed his mind about black people. Now, if you remember the video that we did about the eunuch and Philip traveling together, that was an Ethiopian eunuch. That was a black man who became a Christian and was baptized by Philip. So, the Mormon Church? That's a bad thing. That is not a Christian church in any way, shape, or form. And they actually started teaching that if a black person becomes a Mormon after that day, after June 8th of 1978, if a black person enters into the priesthood, if they become a Mormon, then their skin is going to start to turn white. That is so wrong. But as racist as all of that is, that's not nearly as racist as what Darwinian evolution actually teaches. See, Darwinian evolution, saying that we evolved, primarily that we, as humans, evolved most directly from monkeys. In The Descent of Man by Means of Sexual Selection by Charles Darwin, this was essentially the sequel to The Origin of the Species. Darwin said, and I almost quote, "It is obvious that the black person is still mostly monkey. This is apparent due to the length of their femurs and the size of their noses." See, what Darwin actually taught, what evolution actually teaches, is that the darker your skin color is, the closer you are to being subhuman. So at least with Mormonism, they still teach that black people are people. But Darwinian evolution teaches that black people are still mostly monkey and have not evolved nearly as much as white people. This is absolutely disgusting and racist. The quantity of melanin in your skin is absolutely not going to determine anything about you. It has nothing to do with anything. But whenever you have very racist people who hate God or hate the God of the Bible and they try to create new gods, they're obviously going to be expressing their racist tendencies. So Darwin, he actually said if a single-celled organism is later discovered, then that would disprove everything that he had ever theorized. So Darwinian evolution, by Darwin's own standard, has been disproven. See, the color of your skin is not based on how much you've evolved. The color of your skin is simply an ancestral adaptation that is based on the climate that your people are living in. This is why you see people who live in colder, cloudier areas, they're going to be paler in complexion, whereas people who are in the sun more frequently for generations, their skin is going to adapt to that and they're going to produce more melanin to protect them from it. This is why black people do not get skin cancer nearly as often as white people do. Their skin has naturally adapted to be able to protect them from the sun better. That's it. There is no distinction between white people, black people, Mexican people, Asian people. Everyone is simply slightly different in color and appearance based on the regions that they've been living in, because adaptation, that microevolution, the only real kind of evolution, there's 6 different kinds, 5 are impossible. That is the only real kind, which is just adaptation. That doesn't take millions of years to happen. That can occur within a single generation. I hope you found this interesting. If you're one of the people that is looking to support me in some way, I have now created a Patreon. So if you have any interest in that, it is patreon.com/taco_talks. There will be a link in my.
If you've ever been curious about how the different skin tones evolved, a paper was just published last week that really dove deep into the topic, so I'm going to break it down in this video. The summary starts just before the beginning of the hominin lineage, the last common ancestor with humans and chimpanzees between 7 and 10 million years ago, and they say that phylogenetic analysis suggests that this last common ancestor likely had pale skin that was covered in dark fur. Over time, our lineage begins evolving to a more savanna mosaic environment, and that's really when things begin to shift. And it's not a quick shift, because we're about to jump forward almost 5 million years. But as our ancestors moved towards that savanna environment and over time became more and more adapted for it, that body hair, it was lost. And I shouldn't even say lost. We still have pretty much the same amount of body hair as a chimpanzee. It's just a different type of hair, and a paper was just published last week that goes over that as well, so I'll try to do a video on that pretty soon too. DNA suggests that by between 3 and 1 million years ago, that body hair was really greatly reduced. We see that both in our own DNA, and we can also see it in the DNA of lice when we can look at when those different groups diverged. It's pretty well accepted by now that the reason we lost so much of our body hair thickness was because of sweating. We have more sweat glands because of that lack of hair, and that allows us to be much more efficient when we are out foraging, hunting, scavenging, whatever we're doing in the heat of the day in Africa at this time. Genetic evidence suggests that dark skin tone had really became common in our population by around 1.2 million years ago, which fits pretty well with that evidence that suggests body hair was lost by that time. And the most likely reasoning for this transition to a darker skin tone is to protect from UV. UV rays near the equator can be really damaging. I will mention this new paper was testing an old hypothesis that skin cancer and different type of cancers caused by UV could have been one of the reasons this evolution occurred, and it didn't find support of that because in populations, specifically they were looking at populations in Australia because of the evolutionary mismatch hypothesis, the idea that their skin tone would lead to these cancers developing at a higher rate. That does happen, but it happens after the time that populations would be reproducing, so it doesn't really have that effect when it comes to natural selection. Although they did take it a little further, and they kind of built on the idea that it could still potentially have an impact because as the elders, as they pass away, that could have a cultural impact. And so that is one way it could have impacted our evolution, but it didn't likely have a big factor when it comes to like cancers causing natural selection to cause these skin tones. So that's the origins of our skin tone when it got dark in Africa, and then as populations moved around and eventually really spread out of Africa into other regions, the natural selection shifted. As populations moved further and further from the equator, that stress from the UV was released, but your body still needs some UV to produce vitamin D in the skin, which helps out in many different ways. So one response to that, it happened differently in different populations, but as populations moved around, natural selection ended up favoring traits that allowed more of that UV through, which led to lighter pigmentation in those regions. Follow to learn more about ancient human evolution. Like I said, I'll try to do a video on that paper talking about that loss of hair. Again, not really a loss of hair, just a shift in what the hair.
Can we talk about why people think Black people being portrayed as monkeys is racist? In the past, they used to say that Black people were a less evolved version of humans. And if you study the theory of evolution and look at any of their illustrations of what early man looked like, they always have dark skin, they always have wider noses, and a lot of the early evolutionists were super racist. So those of you offended right now that the Obamas were depicted as monkeys in some mean video, why aren't you offended at evolution? It's literally the most racist theory man has ever come up with.
Now, the theory of evolution is a theory that was formulated by Charles Darwin. And before Charles Darwin died, what he said was that his theory was a lie and people should not use it. That is what is reportedly said about Charles Darwin on his deathbed. See, that time when someone is going to die or when you are critically ill, your life choices crosses through your eyes. The people you wronged, they pass through your eyes. it's mostly regrets, right? That is, if you lived a bad life, you have regrets, right? So he says, no, do not rely on the theory of evolution. I lied. But who are we? We are people who have accepted falsehood to be the truth, and the truth, falsehood, right? The theory of evolution states that living organisms evolved from simple living structures into complex living organisms that we see today. A good example is the evolution of man. Man, as we know him today, falls under the genus Homo, the species sapien. And if you want to ask me why is it Homo sapien and why have I given you a binomial nomenclature, it's because organisms with the same species or in the same species are the only organisms that can freely interbreed, can freely breed, right, and give rise to viable, which means fertile, which means children who can also give children, right, once they are of age. So species, all human beings belongs to the same species. The difference we have is skin color, hair texture, height, blood types, but we belong to the same species, Homo sapien. This classification was a classification that was used by the biologists and the taxonomists to classify living organisms. You know, we have 7 classes of living organisms, 7 divisions, how it is divided. The first one is the kingdom, the second is division, the third is class, the fourth is family, the fifth is genus, and then the sixth, I think there is this 6 or 7, but the sixth is species, right? So if you look at it closely, if you understand it closely, for instance, someone like Blumenbach, Johann Blumenbach, he just formulated a theory that the white race is a superior race and it's the most attractive race. That was Blumenbach when he visited the Caucasus Mountains, right? He formulated so. So his statements were based off of his biases and his stereotypes of other people, right? He is the first person to categorize races: Negroids, Caucasians, Mongoloids. That is what he did, right? But it's a total lie. Racism is a lie. Blumenbach was a racist. It's a lie, but supremacists accepted it to be the truth and they tried to feed us that, right? All this stems from the theory of evolution being lied to us. The moment we accept the truth that is written in the scriptures, and the truth says that for you, I have created, right? You, God, has created me, you and me. And he says that he has created that as in his image and likeness, and we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Do you think a creator can just decide to call his creations ugly and some of his creations beautiful? No, he is a loving God. That's his nature. There's no evil in him. Calling someone ugly is evil, and there's no evil in him. He's not mean. We human beings, we are mean to one another, but he is not mean. So if God says I'm beautiful, I am beautiful. I don't need to wait for Johann Blumenbach to come and tell me or to come and confirm with me. I also don't need to wait for Charles Darwin to come and tell me. I don't need that. I just need God's assurance. And that's why it's important we understand that the theory of evolution is a lie. And it's important we reinforce the statements that have been given by the black professor. Yes, this is Evan commentary. I hope that you've really enjoyed listening to the professor and the commentary as well that I have offered. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one and stay positive.